I'm going to share with you as much as I can about a world of the music industry that most people don't know about, yet you see it every single day. When you turn your TV on or watch a show, or even as you watch this YouTube video, you are seeing ads, commercials, videos that are promoting a product or a brand, and with each of those ads you see, there's music in those ads. And while a lot of times the music being used is not custom and is instead being licensed through sync agencies or libraries or catalogs, there is a whole side of the music world that is focused on creating custom scores for the world's largest brands, and there is a lot of money in it. Last year, I had the great opportunity to work on a couple major ads, and one of them did land final. In other words, my music was placed in that commercial, and it was on TV. Now, because I'm going to be sharing some specific details, I cannot share the brand or the client that I worked for due to NDAs. But let me just say, you've heard music created by the studio. I can pretty much guarantee it. The first thing you need to understand is how this music is made in the first place, the process. What happens from the time a commercial begins production to that commercial actually airing on television. And for that, we need to zoom out so you can see the big picture. Let's just say that BMW wants a commercial. Well, BMW is not going to be the one actually making that commercial. They hire an ad agency, and that ad agency is essentially a general contractor. They are responsible for everything that happens from script writing to shooting to music. But they are not the ones actually creating the music. Like I said, they're the general contractor. They're going to hire a production house or a music house to handle the music. Now, in most cases, the production house is also serving not as the one creating the original score, but the one who has the roster of composers who will make the original score. They have a list of composers or producers that they have created that create the music, and the production house will then compile a bunch of potential songs to then pitch to the ad agency. And this is the first step in how music is made in commercials. The production house is given what is called a brief from the ad agency. This often has the script, descriptions of what the commercial will feel like, the goal of the commercial, and it will include what the agency is looking for in the music. It will usually have a few references of music to give the composers an idea of what kinds of stylistic choices they are looking for as well. Now, one of the biggest challenges is that when a brief is sent to the composer, it's partly my job to interpret what they are saying versus what they want, because the people working on these commercials are not musicians. They don't know what they're talking about. The brief I was given was pretty straightforward, the references made sense, and the agency was asking for a hybrid orchestra score. In other words, blending modern production with orchestral elements. 11:30 in the morning, I received a text from one of the studio producers asking if I was able to get music for a new commercial by the end of the day tomorrow, the following day. This is possibly one of the biggest reasons why most are not cut out for this kind of work. The deadlines are insane. When an ad agency requests music, they want it now. I had only 36 hours to completely write, produce, and mix the music for this brief. And when we're talking about a demo that I'm submitting, this is not a demo like you might think an artist is sending a producer. The demo needs to pretty much sound like a completely final track that is ready to air on TV. And what you need to keep in mind is that I am not guaranteed the commercial. When I'm given a brief, I'm putting my song in the hat to be presented to the ad agency. Me versus potentially 10 or 20 other composers. In some cases, depending on the production house, you could be competing with 100 songs. Now, I know you may be thinking, are you paid to send something in, or are you just hoping to make it? Yes, when you're writing for a brief, you are paid a demo fee. This can range from $100 on the low end to $300 to $500 on the high end. And in the day that I wrote my version, that was not the only thing that I had on my calendar. So we're talking about a few $100s for maybe 4 hours of work, which is not bad on an hourly basis. After the song is composed and submitted, it's a waiting game. On this commercial I wrote for, it was about a week before I heard back and found out that my song was in the top 3 and the ad agency was now requesting revisions. This is where the real work begins. You see, writing for the brief is just getting the ball rolling. Once your song makes the cut, so to speak, it's time for the revisions to begin. And in a lot of cases, ad agencies will ask for things that are either very weird or don't make sense, or in some cases, seem impossible. The first note that I was given on this commercial was that they wanted to, quote, feel it more. And these are the kinds of notes that you get. Very ambiguous and very unspecific types of notes like, we want to just make it better. Like, thanks. What does that even mean? And this is where working for a production house is valuable, because the producer that I was working for at the studio is essentially overseeing the music. He is an experienced composer himself, so we were able to talk a bit about the notes, what they actually want, and in that case, it seemed that they were wanting more low end and lower strings to add some more depth to the song. And that begins the long road of revisions. Oh, and let's not forget the deadline issue I mentioned. Yeah, that doesn't change with revisions. With each revision, I had a day to get the updated version to the studio. So how many revisions on a production like this are we talking about? Well, in my case for this particular job, there were 13 versions of that one song. And this all happened in the span of about 3 to 4 weeks. So there's a lot of waiting in between revisions. I get a revision request that I have one day to get done, I send it over, and then wait for potentially days or maybe a week to hear back. And again, at this point, I am not guaranteed that job. I'm still competing for it with the other tracks that are still in the running. It was not until probably a week before the song was officially greenlit by the brand itself that I knew that my song had the greatest likelihood of making it final. And even then, the advice that I was given was don't celebrate until you get the check, because anything can happen. So almost a month of rounds and rounds of revisions, all knowing that it could still fall through the cracks and not even make it. And this is another reason why most people are just not cut out for this kind of work. It's very stressful, not only because of the deadlines, but because you know that there's a really good chance you don't win it. And in the beginning, the odds are stacked against you. I've heard from some other composers who do this exclusively full time, and they've said that a typical placement rate is 20 to 25% on average. So you will only land 2 out of every 10 commercials you write for. There are outliers to this. You're going to find people doing much better than that, but it is rare from what I understand. So with everything that goes into a single commercial for a mere 30 seconds of music, how much money are we talking about? Now, this number is extremely variable. In other words, there is no standard because every commercial is going to have a different set of variables. Is it a Super Bowl commercial? Is this a regional commercial playing in the state of Texas? Is it a European commercial playing in a tiny country in Europe? Is it a national campaign that's going to be airing on ABC and CBS or maybe ESPN? Where is the campaign? Where is it going to show up? And then what's the budget for that? There are a lot of different variables that will dictate what the actual budget's going to be. You'll find the low end in the $2,000 range and the high end into the $50,000 and up, potentially even to 6 figures. Now, before you get all excited, the studio that I work for told me that $5,000 to $15,000 is a much more realistic range in general. You're not going to find those mega budgets very often. It's exceptionally rare. For me, I was paid in that range that I told you, but I cannot disclose the exact number, but it was in that range that I gave you. And that's pretty much all I can say. So the money for this kind of work is very lucrative if you can sustain it and continue getting briefs, and not just get the briefs, but land final. For me, this is something that I want to do more, but I also find a lot of joy and satisfaction in making music that is not necessarily custom music, but is still for licensing, which would be music that I'm making that would be placed in licensing catalogs and libraries that could still potentially land in a commercial, but it's not custom for that commercial. This side of the music business is fascinating, but it's also not for the faint of heart. If it was easy, then it wouldn't be so lucrative. So you tell me, would you do it?